Is Lance Lynn back? One start, and we feel better about Lance Lynn going forward. Give us your thoughts. 875 KTGR. It was exactly what the Cardinals could have drawn up to have him pitch a little bit into the seventh. They bring on a leverage guy to protect the lead a little more, and then he pitches on into the eighth inning in that sense, and then you hand it off to Helsley. It worked out pretty well for the Cardinals with how they got the early offense, protected the lead, and sure, Ryan Helsley almost lost it in the end, but all's well that ends well, right? Still gets the save.
Almost.
Still gets the
He
save.
He didn't lose it.
So what are we talking about? We don't have to talk about anything.
Nothing went wrong. Not a thing. Still
Scribble
got
over
the
that.
save. That's all that matters. The save. That's it. Just the save.
Those saves where the closer comes in with a 3-run lead and gives up 2, man, those are fun.
Those are
it's
some
like they
deceptive saves right there. It's why I hate the save, but yeah, anyway.
It's like that internal mechanism where you've got a little bit of breathing room, so for whatever reason, you use it. And I think part of that is just, again, Ryan Helsley has still not demonstrated consistent fastball command over the last few weeks. Sunday, he looked really good and thought maybe he was over the hump on this whole thing. Last night was back into the bad zone where fastballs were leaking up and to the arm side for him. Even had a couple of sliders that he didn't get on top of. So I don't know if it's probably got to be mechanical at this point, but I'm no expert. So I'm curious to see kind of how he'll continue to try and work through this. It's been a prolonged spell at this point, but it's amazing to me that even as he's going through that, his save streak is intact. He's 27 for his last 27. All 27 saves on the year have been in succession. I think the first game he had a save chance of the year, he blew it against the Dodgers, and then since then, we have seen him be perfect, even though last night he was not perfect. And it was interesting to see, too, Ryan Fernandez struggle all of a sudden with command a little bit.
Yeah.
Coming in for the end of that seventh inning, as you mentioned, for Lance Lynn, he got a strikeout. He got a strikeout to begin the eighth, and then walked the 8 and 9 batters just like all out of nowhere, and suddenly you had to deal with that situation. It was interesting that John King was up and warming behind Fernandez, but really the spot in the order that was coming up for the Braves, you didn't really necessarily want a lefty to have to face multiple batters, and so once the situation was laid out there for Fernandez, he just had to find it from somewhere and struck out a lefty for the out number 2, and then Ozzie Albies sent one as far as he could send one without it being dangerous for the Cardinals, and Michael Ciani caught it at the wall and stayed there for a moment as though to say, exhale, we got out of this jam.
Yeah.
Cardinals keep finding ways, Andy. It was not pretty in every regard last night because you do only score runs in one inning. They put up a 4-run third, but it was all they ended up needing. Lance Lynn was good, and within that third inning, you did see the principles of really good fundamental baseball that you'd like to see from the Cardinals, hitting with runners in scoring position, and then they pull off the Little League play, the delayed steal of Brenden Donovan kind of leaking off of first base. It draws a throw from the catcher, and Carlson was in the box with 2 strikes, so they're willing to give up that out. They put Donovan in the rundown, and they trade the run as Gorman scores from third. Turns out that run ended up being pretty important. So you're seeing that we talked about the base running in the Giants series was really good, how they found the tells for guys like Logan Webb, and they took advantage. There again yesterday, you find them doing things on the bases that make a difference. You feel really good about the general vibe of this team right now. Just see that offense take the next step. If that happens soon, and it may happen in conjunction with getting some more guys back from injury, this Cardinals team could be fun. Like they could have a really bright future ahead these next few months. If you squint right now, you can see it. And heck, I shouldn't even really need to squint because they're on a 4-game winning streak, but it hasn't still really been consistently the offense. We've seen bits and pieces, though, but it's been nice that on the days where the offense doesn't go crazy, you're at least seeing the rest of the club do its job and pick up those elements to still be able to squeak out these tight ones. It's been very compelling to watch over the past 5 days or so.
Yeah, defensively, it has worked out really well. 875-KTGR if you want to call or text us. I'm interested to get into a little bit of, okay, so Lance Lynn shows that last night. How good do you feel about him and maybe now the Cardinals rotation as a whole with the news that Steven Matz is going to have to take some more time? Of course, the injury expert Will Carroll says he's going to California to see a specialist. That might pave a path towards surgery. We don't know for sure yet, but that's what we're going to be waiting to hear on from Steven Matz. But give us your thoughts on the Cardinals rotation now, 875 KTGR. Let's go to Old Jay here on the KTGR hotline now. Old Jay, what's up?
Okay, so first off, that hockey game last night, if you were not a hockey fan, that game would have made you a fan. I think at one time in the second period, they went like 7 or 8 minutes without a whistle. It was awesome, just back and forth. Congrats to the Panthers. Congrats to Tarasenko in his cup again, even though he contributed almost nothing in the entire playoffs. But that's okay.
Oh,
His team's still going on the cup. As far as Lance Lynn, man, that who is this guy? Because that's kind of, I just wanted an average pitcher, and if he keeps pitching like that, or if he shows the ability to every once in a while, and that rotation, and Mattz, I'm sorry, but Mattz I think is done. He wasn't great when he was pitching, so it's not like we're losing anything. I mean, I know it's an arm, and I know it's, like $11 million or $44 million a year or whatever the heck he's getting paid, but I just don't account for anything. He's just done. And then I know you guys are going to talk about it a little bit later, the whole stadium thing. First off, is South Carolina really that big of an atmosphere? That kind of surprised me. And second of all, when Mizzou's North End Zone project gets done, I bet you that place is going to get really, really loud because, it was getting loud when they were packed and, the North End Zone was open. So I'm really interested to see what the noise levels are like once that project is done.
Yeah, we'll see. Appreciate the call, OJ, here on the Big Show, KTGR. Yeah, I also think that could be a huge boost if they, in fact, are able to finish that on time and are able to make that a home field advantage for themselves. But, we'll get into it. 525, I suppose.
We'll get into it. And as far as Tarasenko, he had 2 goals in the Cup final, one of them coming in a game that they won by only 1 goal. The other one came as the only goal in the 8-1 loss, but had 5 goals throughout the playoffs. Didn't go crazy, but I think he's certainly deserving of the name on the cup.
He's won the last 2 Stanley Cup final Game 7s with the Blues.
I guess that's true. There hadn't been one since 19.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's been part of both of those, and so I thought it was cool that Matthew Tkachuk was the one to hand him the cup last night too. And it's always interesting, see who hands the cup off to whom when they start passing it around and raising.
And
the
ESPN
cup
sometimes even shows it. That's the other fun
right?
part.
Yeah, that was great to see them actually show Matthew Tkachuk and Vladimir Tarasenko. 875 KTGR if you want to call or text us. As it stands now, you've got Gray, Gibson. I would put them in order as far as how much I trust them. Gray, Gibson, Michaelis, and Lynn, and then I guess whoever your 5 is. Right now it's Palante. It could change, I suppose, but it's Palante for now.
And did you go Gibson or Michaelis ahead of the other?
I went Gibson 2, Michaelis 3.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's inoffensive and fine. I don't think I disagree.
It's based off of what I've seen this year, yeah.
And Gibson's been really solid. Michaelis has been pretty darn good recently, too, to where you could make a case. But I would still probably lean Gibson, and Sonny is obviously number 1. Lynn at 4 is fine. I don't know, if last night would have been another bad one, I might not have said 4. I might have said 5 for Lance Lynn. So I'm not sold by 1 start is where I'm going to begin with this. But it's good to see that 2 times in a row now he hasn't walked anybody. Because when you're talking about the guy that led the league in home runs given up last year, and granted that was with different teams and different ballparks, plays his home games now at Busch, and that's a little more friendly. There's definitely times yesterday where balls were hit to the wall or the warning track and they didn't get out. So that's Busch being friendly to pitchers, and it happened a couple of times for the Braves hitting balls to the track or the wall, which is nice to see because it's not just the Cardinals getting burned on that as it normally feels like it is. I'm not sold that Lynn's just going to be this guy again, but it's good to see an example. It's good to see proof of concept of pitching into the 7th, gives up just 1 run. It comes on a solo shot, which is fine. That's kind of the Michaelis way of doing things as well. But where you do get into trouble is when you combine a bunch of walks with, hey, I tend to give up homers. The fact that he doesn't give anything away for free last night means when they get you, but they get you for 1 run or they get you because they earned it. And in that case, that's exactly what it was for Lance Lynn. So, yeah, if he's your number 4 and he gives you more outings like he did last night, this rotation suddenly looks really good. I'm still going after a starter, though, if I'm John Mozeliak. Not because I don't trust Palante, not because I hate on Lance Lynn, but I think we have learned that Mattz is probably not a viable option. I don't know that he's done as a pitcher. I mean, if a back surgery ends up being the case, then maybe he is done on this contract, which is $11 million per year. He's got next year remaining on the deal. That's, something the Cardinals are going to have to wrestle with. For me, I'm at least to the point where I am not counting on Matt's end of this season or even for next year as one of my write it in pencil starting five. I think I need to acknowledge that anything you get from him is a bonus and consider him as such. I'm still looking for a starter right now at the deadline because you're one more injury away, because they do crop up, from then being in a less desirable spot. Good to see the guys that are out there pitching well. You still need to act like you need one more. And look, the manager can finagle that. You can have a long reliever. Whatever you need to do, that's not the part that's a concern. The concern is what happens when somebody doesn't perform or you do have another injury, and you need to figure that out. Like, Palante's doing his best out there. It'd be nice for them to be able to put Palante on in that kind of waiting room of, we'll bring him in if there's an issue, but until then, cycle the other five. It's not maybe fair to Palante. He's doing his darndest, but I think from an organizational perspective on depth, that might be their best bet.
That's what gets you through the season, honestly. I think it could be an interesting question as far as, if they get to the playoffs, what it lines up as. And I would think that they have a pretty good idea of what it could be, but you can always explore the possibility of, okay, better your situation. The fifth starter you get doesn't necessarily have to be the fifth best starter on your rotation when he gets here. He could be the third best or the second best or whatever it is. It just depends on how hard you want to swing at the trade deadline to try and make that happen, and whatever might be available to you, which could be limited. I don't think that it'll be a huge type of market for that, but
I don't know. It'll be limited if you're not willing to pay a price, and
exactly.
We know that
how hard do you want to
the Cardinals,
swing? Yep.
Especially because you're talking about a wild card series. It's better than it used to be a few years ago when it was all you're guaranteed is one game. Like in 2021, they lose to the Dodgers in one game, pitched great, didn't score, and now you're out of the playoffs.
Yeah.
That's going to leave a sour taste in your mouth, to where as an organization, as a front office, you don't necessarily want to sell out future assets in order to earn the chance to play in that one game. You feel a little better about it when you know you're getting the best 2 out of 3, but even then, unless you're going out there and adding a guy that's going to be legitimate, your number 2, and if you're doing that, then suddenly you're saying, all right, we're actually increasing our chances in that first playoff series. But if you're not certain that you're doing that, and even if you are, do you want to pay the price that it'll cost to do that? Where's the appetite for the Cardinals? I think there should be an appetite, and I'm not picking on any of the young players in this organization that could be bait for a trade like that. But I just look at it and go, man, find yourself deep into an October run just once, and maybe then the fan base calms down a little bit and they see the vision, that there's a vision here. Because I think there's a lot of fans who would make the case that there's not really a strong vision that the Cardinals are executing right now. They're kind of in limbo. They're kind of in that middle where you're 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And John Mozeliak might be literally 1 foot in, 1 foot out, because he's talked about the notion of retirement or moving on. So it would be a good message to the fan base to go, hey, there's a guy that's available. We don't maybe know who his name's going to be yet, but we're going to do our level best to pursue him. I think it really helps Andy if that guy is under contract for next year too. Doesn't have to be the right price. It could be a guy you're paying some money to. But if you know that, okay, we can also have this guy for next year and fix some of the issues, because it's going to happen again. Do you bring Lynn back under the option? Do you bring Gibby back under the option? What do you do now that you know Steven Matz is not reliable? Like, they're probably going to need a couple of arms in the offseason too. Would be really helpful to say, hey, attack it with one trade where you have to say goodbye to a couple of prospects or a young player that you really don't want to say goodbye to, but you get someone reliable as a number 2 or number 3 for the stretch run and next year. And then maybe you can go into the offseason focusing on maybe it's one rotation spot to go with mystery guest Kyle Gibson, who you bring back on the option, Sonny Gray, Miles Michaelis, and you add one in the offseason where you don't have to be spread so thin and just make sure you get some dudes. You can really focus on the one guy that can be a difference maker. I could see 2025 panning out really well with one trade now and one signing then to pair with the guys that you have in-house. And that doesn't include Mattz. Yeah, you're going to have to raise the payroll for that because you're still paying Mattz $11 million. He's your number 6 or a long reliever or trade bait. But you just need to, if you're serious about reading the tea leaves on what his career has been in St. Louis. You might have to make those types of difficult decisions. But yeah, I'm pursuing it, Andy. I think the Cardinals fans deserve a team that's trying to win in the playoffs this October because they're doing enough right now to prove that they can get there. Help them out and make sure it happens. That would be my stance.
How do you like the rotation right now, Cardinal fans? Give us your thoughts at 875-KTGR with a call or a text. Brad's here on the KTGR hotline. Brad, what you got?
Guys, by now you all know it doesn't take much to get Brad to call in, so I want you all to know today's key word that got me triggered was the word Mattz. Steven Matz triggered my head, and I immediately called that magical phone number, and those awesome guys that I love living in my radio answered the phone. Thank you. So why I'm bringing this up is Mattz needs to be Monty Williams. Is that right? Monty Williams?
Monty Williams.
We're talking about the coach that they're paying, but he's gone anyway?
Yes. He's getting paid so much money, but not by one organization, but by two, and he could eventually go get a third. Anyways, why can't the Cardinals just cut ties? You would have to dig in the archives. But there was about a year ago I called in. I mean, it was time then, and then, of course, the minute I made that call, he strung together like 4 outings where he went 6 innings, and everybody's like, oh, he's back. But he's not, and it's unfortunate because I think he's left-handed. I think that's awesome, but it's just not working out. So, Brenden, you may have said a number, and I don't remember, $11 million or whatever. But if it's $11 million, I know everybody's like, oh, you just can't sweep that under the rug. Baloney. Monty Williams is getting triple that, if not more, and then that organization is willing to do it because they have to admit they failed. It just didn't work out. Move on. I don't understand why we hold on to these guys so long. It's like we're just trying to beat it, a dead horse, and hope it comes back to life, and it's not going to happen. So, anyways, thank you for the keyword, and everybody that's listening, kids, the word is Matt. If it's said again, everybody can cringe.
Mattz. Appreciate the call, Brad, here on the Big Show. Look, I understand why the Cardinals haven't cut him yet. Like, it's not time to do that, but I get it. I understand that fans' patience has run out with this guy. I understand.
What's the role, right? You can treat him mentally as a guy that's not relied upon in your starting five, and that is going to make it more palatable if the Cardinals take that approach. They didn't coming into this year, and I understood why, because you could squint at certain times throughout Matz's tenure with the Cardinals and see that he actually put up some pretty decent numbers when he was on the field. But that's the key phrase, when he's on the field. And 2 years go by, 2 injury situations. The first one was fluky, right? He was trying to field a comebacker and broke his leg or whatever it was, and it felt kind of fluky. Last year, though, like, he dealt with injuries. He dealt with poor performance at the beginning of the year. And as Brad mentioned, there was a window last summer where he started to put it together and makes you think, oh, this time's going to be different. And then coming into this year, it's easy math when you're ownership, Andy, and you see he's making $11 million and he's got $22 million still on the books for the upcoming 2025 season, for you to just kind of sink into that mentality like, well, we got to give him a shot. But I think fool me once, fool me twice. And then here's number 3. It's going to be shame on Cardinals if they allow Steven Matz to sort of, not the guy, because he's a great dude, but the pitcher and the repertoire and the reliability of Steven Matz and everything that comes with that, if they allow that to hamstring their organization for, I'm going to even say for August, September of this year, that's a mistake. But certainly as you have a full off season to make your decisions on what do you want to do next year with regard to planning a rotation, they can't allow themselves to fall into that trap. It's called a sunk cost. And at this point, when it comes to Steven Matz being a viable, put it in pencil of your 1 through 5 in the month of January, you cannot put Steven Matz into that grouping anymore. I am okay with the Cardinals not cutting him because I wouldn't look a gift horse in the mouth. If you've got a guy you're paying $11 million to either way, and let's say you can't trade him away for nothing where the other team eats a little bit of salary, that's probably another route you could go, right? If you trade him for a non-prospect that's 17 years old that the other team is like, whatever, that's fine, you have him, and we're going to pay $4 million of his $11 million. The Cardinals pay the other $7 million. That's the area that I think we're in at this point when it comes to Mattz this offseason. But if you can't find that deal, okay, just understand that he's a swing man. He's what Seth Lugo was before he was Seth Lugo, right? It's like he doesn't have to be one of our starters. If we have 2 starters go down, we'll plug him in at number 5 because that's desperate measures at that point. That's, I think, the way you need to catalog Steven Matz mentally. And maybe for Brad, if you think about him in those terms, and the Cardinals, if they commit themselves to doing the same, maybe his name won't bring up that retching feeling that Brad just felt like he had to call right in once he heard the name. But I think if the Cardinals don't do that, they're doing a disservice to what their rotation could be. Again, it's not personal with Steven Matz, but come on, we've seen 3 years of it now. Let's recognize year 4 shouldn't be the same mentality. And even August, September this year shouldn't be. Find yourself a starter. Don't say, well, 6 weeks we might get Mattz back. No, I don't think that's going to fly.
No.